Welcome to the Not My Scene podcast, the podcast where we explore different scenes, communities, subcultures, and corners of the internet and tell you what we find. I'm Yarden.
And I'm Kaya. Welcome.
Woo! How are you doing?
Good, dude. I am so excited about the response we've received to the show so far. We recorded a few episodes in advance before we started releasing episodes. So a little peek behind the scenes. This is the first episode we've recorded since releasing, and it's been so fun to see everyone's reaction. So thank you so much for listening and telling your friends. And yeah, it's been awesome.
Yeah, I feel like it's so much more real now. Like now recording today, I'm like, okay, I can like kind of imagine that there are actually people listening versus before it was like, well, who knows if anyone will ever hear this.
We have ears on the line, live ears. Yeah.
But yeah, it's been fun.
Also, huge plug. It's been awesome getting so many responses to the email, notmyscenepod@gmail.com. So that's been really cool too.
Yes. At the end of the episode, we're going to respond to some of the responses we've gotten. So keep sending them in. Do you want to say what the title of that segment is?
Yeah, I do. Okay, so we've gotten such a good reaction. So many people responded to our first episode, Shifters, with ideas and comments and questions. So we decided to launch a new segment, and we're calling the segment Scenester Sisters. It was a really intuitive name for us. It flowed off the tongue. And in the Scenester Sister segment, we will respond to listener-submitted follow-ups and questions and gab about what you guys want us to talk about. So definitely stick around at the end of the episode for that.
For our Scenester Sisters, yes. And before we get into today's topic, do you have anything that's been your scene lately that you want to tell us about?
Yeah. I've been thinking about this over the week, and I fear I don't have like anything particularly new to say about this. Like, this is a topic that has already been in the public discourse a lot, at least in my circles, but my scene has definitely been Severance. That's like all.
Oh my God, that was literally what I was gonna say.
It's so funny too, because I was talking to my dad yesterday and he was like, you should really find a way to work Severance into the podcast. Like, maybe you should have a segment called What Is My Scene? And I was like, Dad, that's just literally what we're doing.
Wait, I thought you hadn't started the second season though.
I have started. I'm caught up. I'm so deep in it. And
yeah,
I started intentionally because Den was saying that she was watching along live so that she could engage with like user theories on Reddit, and that sounded really fun to me. So I started watching live for that purpose, and the theories are so good.
I know. And also I did see one that I think has a direct tie to Shifters.
Let's talk about it.
Which, like, I don't think this is even a spoiler because I think if this theory is true, I'm going to be like, what was the point of any of this? But, like, someone hypothesized that they were actually, like, severing people in a way so that they weren't physically even going, or they weren't necessarily, like, seeing everything that we're seeing, like, all of the weird stuff on the severed floor, but they're, like, changing their reality. I guess maybe it's possible, but it's kind of like reality shifting adjacent, but like forced reality shifting.
Yeah. Imagine a reality where your innie is just someone who's dating Draco Malfoy for 9 hours a day, and then you shift back to your outie.
Clocking in at the Slytherin girlfriend factory.
Another hard day's work. That's funny. Yeah, it's so good. Listeners, if you aren't watching Severance, watch Severance. And honestly, email the notmyscenepod@gmail.com. I want to know what you think of the show. It doesn't have to be about our show. I just want to talk about Severance more.
Yeah. Okay. Also, I tried listening to the like official Severance companion podcast.
Whoa, talking talk to a.
But it was so crazy to me. Okay, first, I didn't super enjoy the podcast because it wasn't about crazy theories. It was like, this is how we filmed this, which like is probably interesting to a lot of people, but it wasn't as interesting to me. But it would be like there's ads in it, and it's so jarring because the ads like are like they're tying it to severance, and they're like, you're not severed, but make your job like efficient by using Confluence. And I'm like, oh my God, this is crazy. Like, because I feel like part of the show is like commentary on like, I don't know, some dismal aspects of the workplace, even if you're not severed. So to like have random, I don't know, workplace productivity tools advertising on it is kind of wild.
Dude, totally. I'm imagining like you're not severed, but to make sure you keep a healthy work-life balance in your headspace, use Headspace.
Yes, literally, like that is something that they would have.
Feeling like you need an identity for your Audi? Try getting a new domain on Squarespace. All right, well, that's beautiful. We have the same scene this week.
Yeah.
Cool.
So, shall we get into today's topic? We have kind of like a double topic today, but these two scenes are like, they have a lot of overlap. I would say there's a Venn diagram where they both have elements that are different, but then the overlap as well.
Yeah, I agree. I was trying to put these two topics into like a square rectangle relationship, but I don't think it really works because
I don't think so.
There's elements to both that doesn't align with the other. But yeah, today maybe we can talk through like how we kind of came up with this dual episode. Today we're going to be talking about homesteading and then also relatedly trad wives. We thought about doing just a trad wife episode originally, but we decided it was a bit misaligned with the theme of the pod in the sense that I don't think there's a world where either of us would consider becoming trad wives. Like, not only is it not our scene, it's just like really not something we're down with. Yeah. But it is something that we kind of wanted to talk about because it is a crazy quarter of the internet, and homesteading feels related in some ways, and that is more of a scene that we are more open to exploring. So we thought it'd be nice to talk about them hand in hand. Yeah. Does that sum it up?
I think so. Yeah, and if we're talking about an online culture, which we are talking about a lot, it's like kind of hard to avoid one of these things if you're looking into the other. At least I've found like one can very easily like lead into the other one.
Agreed. Definitely.
Yeah.
And we're excited for today's episode because we got some good feedback on having a IRL interview with a member of the community on our roller coaster enthusiast episode. Shout out Thusies and Brian. He was so great. So we are very excited that we are going to be interviewing a Gen Z homesteader on this episode. So that's something that we're looking forward to sharing with you guys.
Yes. I'm super excited for that. Should we, I guess, talk about what we mean when we say homesteading, and trad wives too?
Yeah. Let's start with homesteading. So my understanding of homesteading is it's a lifestyle based around the idea of like resilience and self-sufficiency and like kind of like returning to this, kind of old West homesteady idea of like raising your own livestock and having crops and creating things yourself and doing things from scratch. And a lot of the times it can or cannot be associated with like living off the grid, but definitely tied to just like general ideas of connecting with the earth and trying to live in a more like self-sustainable way.
Yeah, doing things from scratch. Yeah, and I mean, I think the roots of the term are like, pretty grim, like the government like giving people land but then like displacing native people, which I don't think that's like what anyone like the term has changed meanings, and like the
Yeah.
modern definition is much more like what you're talking about, just like being self-sufficient, and I think
Yeah. But good to
yeah,
acknowledge.
good to acknowledge. And yeah, I feel like there's such a range in terms of what I've come across in terms of like modern homesteading, um, where it ranges from like what you were saying, people fully living off the grid, raising livestock, having acres of land, to, more like younger people just like seeing what they can do with like their backyard and just trying to have a garden and make more things from scratch.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, I don't honestly know where to put this person, but when we talk about making things from scratch, of course, Nara Smith comes to mind. Like, I do think that she is kind of bringing more attention to that idea. I don't know. Would you consider her a trad wife or a
I
homesteader?
would, yeah. I mean, I feel like
A trad wife?
if you search TradWife, like she comes up.
Okay.
I don't
So
know
maybe
if
we should
she...
save discussion of her for
Yeah,
Trad
okay.
Wife City.
But again, this is why it's so hard,
Um,
because there is that overlap.
Yeah.
For sure.
But Nara Smith is not getting like muddy in the garden. She's not like getting her hands
Right.
in the earth. As far as I know, maybe she is. She's more like,
Yeah.
making Cheez-Its from scratch.
Yeah, I haven't... I can't even imagine her dirty. Okay, wait.
Her
We're
structural
saving...
tops. Okay,
We're
so,
saving
yeah.
discussion on Nara Smith. We can't resist.
Hold on, Nara Smith. I know it's hard too. Yeah, it's interesting too because we both grew up in a very rural community where a lot of people were like low key homesteading. So I think we have a good amount of experience with homesteading off the internet, just based on
Totally.
like, growing up
And
somewhere
it's not
rural.
like it's a new thing at all. So, like, maybe it's a trend online because of just everything is a trend now with TikTok and whatnot. But definitely, yeah, like people have always been doing this and doing it in different ways. Like, even just within homesteading, even like taking out the trad wife part, I feel like there's very like politically left-leaning groups and like conservative kind of politics that both align themselves with this lifestyle.
Yeah, I agree with that. When I was looking into homesteading, I found a video that went through like a day in the life of homesteading, which I thought was kind of interesting. And I thought we could walk through like what it actually looks like for someone to homestead, at least like this one example of someone. And I mean, it just sounded like so much work. I know that there's like varying degrees. Like you can homestead by having a garden box, or you can homestead by like really doing the whole thing. And this person had like a whole thing. So they wake up at 6 a.m. and the man goes out to milk the cow first thing in the morning, which honestly to me, that's like, I could really get behind first thing milking a cow. I might be romanticizing this too much, but he was describing like how he gets fresh air, like cold, dark, fresh air on his face at 6 a.m. And then he's just like in solitude with the mother cow. And
But you know,
He, like-
it doesn't smell fresh out there. You know, it smells like cow.
so true, so true. Also, I learned so much from this video too. Like he had a calf as well, and he tied the calf up next to the mother cow being milked to like socialize the calf to the idea that one day she would also be getting milked. Yeah. So that was interesting to me. And then like this is all at like 6 a.m. and then he does all these other chores like feeding the chickens, moving hay around, like putting fresh hay where there was dirty hay. And then they spend like so much time in the morning. They start working on like preserving food. Oh, they also homeschool their kids. So homeschooling in the morning. Then they like preserve the various food that they've farmed. They make like homemade snacks like fruit leather out of berries and cane sugar. Yum.
Wow.
They bake bread. And then it shifted to like industrial afternoon, and he like fixed
Industrial afternoon.
my day list on Spotify.
Literally. Industrial afternoon, cow milking, dark
It's like
fresh
all
air.
And he like fixed a weed eater tool and like took care of the tractor maintenance, and then he cut down a bunch of raspberry briars. They gardened for like another 2 hours, and then he went on a run, and then they made dinner, and their dinner was a chicken from their farm, and it was like a really full day.
I mean, it is definitely a lot of work if you're really doing it. And then especially if you're adding in like being an influencer, that's like extra work.
Oh my gosh,
it also is funny because it seems like so counter to the whole premise of living off the grid to then be like posting everything you do.
Totally. I think like for the off the grid homesteaders, there's definitely there's like a dissonance between the idea of like filming everything you do and also like not using traditional forms of like electricity. But I do like the homesteaders who are like more just focused on how to incorporate growing your own food. Like I'm all for those people acting like influencers. I do want to talk though about, once we get to TradWives, I have some like pretty strong opinions on TradWives being influencers and like how that aligns with the TradWife mentality.
Yeah, no, same.
But we're gonna do that when we talk about TradWives.
We're like gritting our teeth through homesteading. No, I mean, really, it is super interesting. It's just like, I mean, there's less like controversy, I would say.
Yeah. It's not necessarily like as political of a thing. So
yeah, although there is like, I feel like the kind of leftist homesteading movement of being like, I don't know, eco-conscious. Like I saw the left side of homesteading sometimes calls themselves solar punk.
Cool.
Probably relating to like using solar energy and like, I don't know, people more into like a communal vibe, less of the like individualistic homesteading. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's a good point. And on like the flip side, it can be political in a conservative sense too, because I have seen a lot of people who are into homesteading as like a means to survive when they like take down our traditional systems, and like when the world crumbles, they want to be like self-sufficient.
Yeah.
And that gets a little bit more into this like strange connection between homesteading and Nazism, which I read a little bit about online, but
yeah, like, and they're like wanting to have like separate yourselves and like have like a community of just white people. Like that was a thing.
Yeah, that's definitely a thing.
Yeah.
But there's also a really good side to homesteading that we are more aligned with.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's the whole like horseshoe theory of it. Like you can go pretty far in one direction and end up back around. Like, yeah, if you want to homeschool your kids and like not vaccinate them as part of this like homesteading lifestyle, that could be like someone that started out really leftist or that's doing that. Yeah.
I feel like raw milk, specifically right now, is like such a important
I was
part
gonna
of
like
this.
talk about with like homesteading and TradWives, like there are certain like foods that are like symbolic of the community. A lot of them are cow related.
Maybe we shouldn't say. I don't think raw milk is like universally. I'm sure there's homesteaders out there who pasteurize
maybe
their
not
milk,
symbolic, but
like really relevant to discourse around it right now.
Yeah, like there's the raw milk, there's the bone broth, there's like really the butter, which like the butter looks so good.
Yeah. Oh my God, the butter. We were churning our own butter for a little bit in my household.
Really?
Yeah, it was okay. That was kind of a use of the royal we. I actually got my roommate Hannah a butter churner for her birthday, which like makes me sound so like Ballerina Farm's toxic husband. um, but it was well received. She wanted the gift, and yeah, we like got her heavy cream, and while we were watching TV, she would just churn the butter in this little mason jar contraption, and it was so good. Like she would make like
Wow.
homemade miso butter, and like homemade pickled jalapeno butter, and like cinnamon sugar butter, and it was awesome.
That sounds so good. I mean, watching a lot of these homesteading and TradWife videos, I'm like, the food looks really good.
For sure. Like
Like
imagine how their
homemade
tomatoes are
sourdough.
hitting. Oh yeah.
I mean, I feel like I've seen sourdough called like the gateway drug to like homesteading.
Yeah. Well, I think this is partly like I do think this we're definitely in like homesteading has been around for a long time, but I think at least online amongst young people, we're definitely in like a peak popularity for it right now. And I think a lot of that is because of COVID sourdough baking. Like COVID was such a gateway for people to be like, can I make this myself? Because Trader Joe's is out of it. Or just like being at home with too much time on their hands.
Or being
And
like, I
now-
want to move out somewhere like that's not like congested with people.
Yeah. And now we have like remember that girl who was making sourdough on TikTok in 2020? Well, now she has like 10 acres of land and is slaughtering her own cattle.
Okay, this is sad, but I did see an article about this is one of the dark sides. We've already listed a few, but one of the dark sides of homesteading is like people that are doing like amateur like butchering because they don't know how to kill the animals like
Whoa.
the right way. Yeah, and apparently there's like a lot of posts. I just read this article about it in sentientmedia.org, which I think talks a lot about like animal rights, but they quoted like a lot of Reddit posts where people were like basically like sharing horror stories or being like, I'm gonna get chickens, but I don't really know how to kill them the right way, which is scary.
Yeah. Something else that I learned in my research was that I never knew there's like egg chickens are not the same as meat chickens. So if you get, like, if you want to be, first of all, if you have chickens that lay eggs, if you have egg chickens, you have to, as a homesteader, you have to like think about financially, like, is there a point where I'm going to kill these chickens that are no longer producing eggs? But it's not for me. Like you would just kill it because of like like if you don't want to like keep around aging birds necessarily. I don't think that's not something everyone does, but I was reading about like the finances of homesteading, and like that's one of the considerations is if you want to like keep these birds around after they've stopped producing eggs, but killing them is like you can't actually, well, you probably could eat them.
It's just
meat,
like
obviously.
not the tastiest.
Yeah, it's not the tastiest.
That's the first thing I thought of was like Survivor, because sometimes, they'll give them two chickens and they'll like be like, should we keep them to get like some eggs for the rest of our days, or like do we kill them now and eat the meat? So because of that, I thought they were the same.
Yeah, so me too. But if we ever go on Survivor, we can be like, these aren't meat birds. There's no point.
I'd rather eat nothing.
On the finance piece, I think that's something else that I kind of had undervalued. Before really digging into homesteading, I had a lot of romantic ideas about engaging in some homesteady behavior, but it's really expensive. I saw a video by another couple who basically had homesteaded for a year and then decided that they were going to stop homesteading, and it was kind of interesting to see like first how they built up as someone who like was not homesteading at all to like having a homestead, and then why they stopped.
Wait, for only a year?
Yeah, for only a year. But they homesteaded in the Pacific Northwest, trying to see if they could, be self-sufficient and support resilient food production. That was like their main goals. And it kind of spiraled. Like first they got chickens, built a coop for them. Then they got a dozen quail, built a coop for them. And then they got bunnies. And they said it quickly became a meat rabbit colony.
A what? Like
A meat rabbit colony.
MEAT.
MEAT. Meat rabbit colony. And then, so first it was the egg laying birds, and then it was the meat birds. So they had a second coop for the meat birds. And then they also like harvested all these vegetables and preserved them. They'd put in a ton of work under like 1 year. But their lessons were interesting. Like some of them were positive, and I would like to have experiences like this as a homesteader. Like they really developed an appreciation for food waste, because like growing and raising their food, like you really would not want to waste food once you know the labor that's gone into it. But they also said death is real was one of their really big takeaways. Like you have to confront death like so much more than if you're not engaging with animals and your food in that way. And they talked about having to put down a chicken with a crooked beak, which is so sad. I don't even know why you would have to do that, honestly, but
It's like they could still lay eggs. Well, maybe because they can't eat, they would just die.
yeah. Or maybe they were just on like a power trip from running the homestead.
Seems
Everything
like
has to be
too
perfect.
hard, too fast.
Totally. And then this is what's so crazy. They said realizing that death is real made them feel concerned about the idea that they could die at like any point. And then they would have
Whoa.
spent their remaining days shoveling animal poop and like weeding and stuff. Like the homestead was so much work, and they were like, we are just animals and we could die at any point. So why are we wasting our time doing this? So then, and the other thing that they said was hard is there's like, you really can't be spontaneous as a homesteader, because like, yeah, you could go on a vacation if you got
Like,
someone to watch your
yeah.
house, but like it's so much to watch, you know?
Yeah, you basically like have to like hire like someone with like homesteading experience.
Exactly. Yeah. Homestead swap. So the video ended with them putting their house up for rent, and they were planning to use their like landlord income from the homestead to travel for a year with their kids instead.
I feel like if your outlook is why am I wasting my days doing this, then you shouldn't be a homesteader.
Yeah, that's a good point. I don't know. I feel like they did want to spend their days like that at first, but then the close experience with death just like gave them the shivers in general.
Yeah.
They were like, we need a change.
Yeah.
But that video did. I think it would be hard to not be able to travel.
It's tough. Like if you think it's hard to travel with like a dog, think about
Imagine having a meat rabbit colony waiting for you at home.
trying to find someone on Rover to watch your meat rabbit colony.
Yeah.
Should we talk to Sierra?
Yes. Okay. So this is so exciting. Everyone, welcome to the pod, Gen Z homesteader Sierra. Thank you, Sierra, so much for joining us. Do you want to introduce yourself?
I would love to. My name is Sierra, and I think that you all found me through my TikTok, if I'm correct on that.
Yeah.
So on there, I post like homestead content and like cooking from scratch. And I have a garden, and I have a toddler who takes up a lot of my time. So I'm usually with him, or I'm growing something in the backyard.
Yeah, we loved finding your content. And I'm just super interested in like how younger people especially are like getting into homesteading. Like how did you first get into it?
My sister-in-law, she started a garden in 2023, and she did so good, and like she used to be like so stressed out all the time, and then she started gardening, and like something about her changed. I was like, I don't know who you are and what you've done with your original self, but whatever you're doing now is great. And so I actually tried to start a garden the same year that she did, and it failed horribly, like so bad. And so I just like went for it last year, and I learned a lot from her, but I also watched like a lot of YouTube, like definitely like over 100 hours on YouTube. Like any video there was, I watched it. Um, and it was a really small garden, but next year I plan on doing something like a lot bigger. And we're doing the farmers market next year, so I really hope that I can I can bring in the demand,
Yeah.
supply for the demand rather.
Farmers market is like big leagues. Like that's, you're
Yeah.
going beyond self-sustainability and, entering a whole new market. That's awesome. I have also tried to create gardens in the past, and it's been a spectacular failure. So I have so much admiration for you.
Yeah, it makes me really excited that a lot of people that are younger are starting to do it too, because there's a lot of things that kind of feel like dying trades and skills.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it sounds like it started more as like an escape or a hobby, but now you're pivoting it to be like a business, right?
Yeah, I'm trying to, because it's kind of expensive, so it'd be nice to like get
Yeah.
some of the money back, but also like I shared a lot with like our neighbors and family and friends and stuff,
Oh.
and it felt really good to give it out to other people, and people like gave me good feedback, and so that made me feel good. And I saw the farmers market in our area, and they didn't really have like too much variety of anything. It was just all like
Mm.
tomatoes and the same thing everywhere, and you can tell that they're just trying to share what they have. But I was like, if I could provide a little bit more than what other people are, then I feel like it'd be beneficial for the community and for me.
Yeah. I love the idea of homesteading as like a more community minded
Hmm.
pursuit, because like I've been doing deep dives online about different types of homesteaders, and I do think like there's one part of the homesteading community that's so like self-sufficiency, but in like a very individualistic way. Like they're very oriented towards like more doomsday prepping and like how to make sure that you as an individual and like your immediate family will be protected if something happens. But yeah, so I'm inspired by you like sharing with your neighbors and bringing it to the broader community.
To what you were saying about like other people doing a lot of like self-centric things, I see why it's like beneficial to do it, because like first you want to feed your family,
Mhm.
but I think like if you have an abundance of something, if you're willing to share it, I don't know, it just seems like a little weird to me not to want to. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, we were so excited when we saw your video because we, like, whenever we explore a different community online for the podcast, our algorithm gets like completely washed with all of the, like you watch like three homesteading videos in a row and suddenly it's like all homesteading videos.
Hmm.
And there was definitely like more of a TradWife lean to most of the videos that we were seeing, and then we saw yours and we were like, this is amazing, we found someone who's like not alt right that wants to talk about homesteading online. So it was, your account was like a breath of fresh air for us.
I appreciate that. Yeah. I guess I do kind of fall into like more of the traditional role with my relationship. Like, because I only work part time and I do all the cooking and stuff like that. But like on days that I don't want to cook, it's just assumed that I'm not doing it and that my fiance's doing it. And it's not like I'm like guilted into doing these things. So honestly, I feel empowered by doing the
Yeah.
things that I do, which it makes me sad that there's a lot of women who feel like it's like what they have to do. I just kind of fell into this and I was like, wait, I actually enjoy this. I want to keep doing it. And the days that I don't want to, I don't. And it makes me feel good that I don't feel like I have to do something. Um, and honestly, the community is kind of, like you said, alt right. And it's kind of scary there. And so I was like, how can I show people that they're safe here, and that
Yeah.
they can learn here? So I just kind of like put myself out there, and I was really scared to do so, because whenever you get a lot of appreciation, you also get like a lot of backlash too. And I posted a video that went viral, and I didn't know that if you post on TikTok, there's like filtered comments that don't get approved. You have to approve them. And some of the
Oh.
comments were like death threats to me. And I
Oh
was
my
like,
God.
Oh my
yeah, I was like,
gosh.
you guys have a lot of time on your hands. It's scary out there.
Yeah, that is scary. Well, we're very grateful for your content.
And they would just be things like, how dare you vaccinate your child and stuff like that. And I'm like, sorry, I believe in science. You don't have to
It's
be here.
it's so interesting. Like I feel like for a community, like gardening is so scientific to me. So it's funny that there's like this overlap between distrust of science and gardening and homesteading. Like, have you been able to find an online community of homesteaders that is more like-minded, or what has your experience been like connecting with homesteaders online or in person?
Honestly, like right after I put myself out there, I started like getting comments of people being like, hey, I post similar content and I have the same views as you. So I would go and like watch their content and follow them and be like, you know what, like I actually really enjoy their content too. And then like the next thing I knew, there was more and more people. So I hope that other people who are trying to find that community too are able to, because it's kind of like you said with your For You page. If you watch like 2 or 3 videos of the same kind of thing, it's kind of all you get for a while. So honestly,
Yeah.
my algorithm's really good right now, and I haven't really found a community here in Kentucky where I can engage with people that have similar views as me.
Do you like have any kind of goal or like vision with your platform? Like, how big do you want it to get?
I would love to teach as many people as I can and like also
Yeah.
build like a community. If it continues to grow, I'll be happy because that's more people I can talk to and connect with. It's a little overwhelming sometimes because my phone like will just blow up randomly with notifications, and I'm like, I need to figure out how to turn these off. And but then I'm also getting like a lot of good questions about people being like, hey, how do I do this, how do I do that? And it makes me feel good. If I have the answer, I can give it to them, or if I don't, I'm able to like recommend someone on YouTube who posts that kind of content and stuff like that.
What about goals like with respect to your homestead? Like, do you have, if like, how self-sufficient do you think you could get? Are there like particular things you want to learn how to do, or crops that you're like hoping you'll be able to develop later that are harder?
So my fiance and I have talked, and he said that he doesn't know if he could handle having cows on the property. And then I was like, you know what? I can kind of see that because cows are loud. Like, so where we live, it's like a small neighborhood, but we're still like far away from each other. Anyway, I might go off on a tangent for a second. But our neighbor has cows that are like at least 3 or 4 acres away from us, and we hear them in our home.
Oh, wow.
They're so loud. But we're getting ducks this year. I'm pretty sure.
Cool.
I think we're getting them. And then last year, I really wanted to grow corn, but corn is so hard. Like I have watched so many like how to grow corn videos. There's not very many, but I've watched them, and there's like so many different steps to it. But I still bought some because you might as well try. But I'm also expanding the garden to like half of an acre in order to do like the farmers market and stuff.
Yeah.
Which is kind of what I'm prioritizing this year just to see what happens. Um, and I'll probably continue like canning things just for like my family and stuff, just because that's a lot of time and energy and resources. So, but I don't know if I could ever like, what am I trying to say here?
Like
There's like
live
some
off the
things that,
grid.
yeah, I don't think I could do that. Like
Yeah.
I love TV, and I love like going out and doing things, and I feel like that's kind of where like a lot of people relate to what I'm doing now, is that like I'm very open. Like I love like doing things like going to the movies, or like I don't know, just doing random things. And I also eat like really unhealthy sometimes. I'm not like an all or nothing kind of
Mm-hmm.
person, and I think that's really authentic because like growing
Yeah.
up I loved ramen noodles so much that my nickname was Noodles, and my family will still call me that at 24 years old. And so I stick to my roots. I eat ramen noodles at least once or twice a week, but I also like bake my own bread, you know? So it's like,
Yeah.
as long as there's some balance, I never want to be all or nothing, because that just sounds like too much work. And, what I do now is already kind of a lot.
Yeah, totally. No, that was something I really loved about your content for sure. Like I saw one of your TikToks, you said like sometimes I eat a frozen pizza. And
Yeah.
like with yeah, with some of the content creators, it's like, is this real? Like, do they actually make everything from scratch? Because it'll be like the crackers and the like cheese and like everything. And I mean, it's cool if they have the time to do that, but it also like seems super unattainable, like, and could even
Mhm.
turn people off from even like wanting to try to do some like any kind of gardening or like making your own stuff if you feel like you have to do all or nothing.
Totally.
Yeah.
How can I ask how much time it takes you like on a average day right now to maintain what you have, like canning and gardening and taking care of the plants that you've got going?
So honestly, like the gardening part didn't take much of my time. Like in the beginning, it probably took me like an hour or two a day for the small garden I had, just because I was like constantly like is there an ant on this tomato? You know, and I would squish it if I found one. And then after that, I stopped watering it, and I just stopped like checking on it as much. And I would just go out like not once or twice a week, probably like 2 or 3 times a week, and just pick what I could and like plant things if I needed to, which probably was like roughly like an hour a week instead of like an hour a day. But canning is very time consuming, and I really only do that in the summer. And I think that's probably what I'll stick to, just because like making fresh salsa, you'll need like fresh tomatoes and all the things that come with that. So the summer is like super busy. But thankfully my fiance and my son, like they kind of just like hang out and vibe, do their own thing while I'm like in the kitchen doing my thing. But like he loves being in the garden. So even if I do want to spend some extra time, it's not that, bad. But all in all, canning, I think, takes at least like 3 hours if it's like a simple recipe. So like you might as well just commit the whole day to it,
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Definitely.
I have a canning question. I saw in one of your videos you use the term rebel canning. What is rebel canning?
Oh, okay. So, how do I put this nicely? People will, oh God. So I can't, it's the USDA, and I could be wrong. It's the USDA that tests all the recipes to make them like safe and whatnot. But I just buy ball canning recipe books, which are tested and safe. Like they tested them in a lab, and like the longevity of them, and when it's safe and when it's no longer safe and stuff. So rebel canning is like the opposite. They just like say they're making like Alfredo sauce. They'll just like make it however they want and just put it in a can and like come up with a random time to put it in their canner and just like hope for the best. And like you're not supposed to can dairy. You're not supposed to like you're only supposed to pressure can things that are like low acid, and water bath canning is for things like tomatoes and like pineapples, things that are high acid. And they will just do like whatever they want. And it shouldn't like scare me so bad, but I'm like, I could never do that. And even the thought of like canning meat is like really scary for me still. Just because I know you can eat canned meat. Like I eat like canned tuna and things like that, but like doing it myself, I don't know. I don't want to mess up and then my family get botulism. But I don't know. A lot of people are rebel canners because they're like, I don't let the government tell me what I should do. And I'm like, okay, but posting it online is like you're teaching all these people how to do things the wrong way, and they could potentially get sick. And then I don't know, if I was doing that, it would just make me feel bad if I could possibly be responsible for that. But I don't do that.
Yeah.
It's scary.
Yeah.
So it's just like rolling the dice.
Yeah. Like hope my family doesn't die from this recipe.
Yeah.
I rebel can when I like meal prep something for the week and then I like don't eat it in time, and then I'm like, can I have this like clam chowder that's 8 days old? And generally I'm like, no, I can't. This Tupperware is not doing it.
Sometimes
that's funny,
I'll
though.
give it the sniff test, I'm like, it's day 4. Is this pizza still good? And I'll sometimes eat it. But it's not like I'm telling people like, you can totally eat 4-day-old food from your fridge,
I saw some like post that was like pizza left out of the fridge for even an hour is not safe, and I'm like, that is like most pizza I've eaten.
Yeah.
Honestly, I love like a room temperature piece of pizza. Like that like gummy texture to the cheese is desired to me. Okay, that's crazy though. I'm like interested in canning, but I'm so scared of botulism. So the fact that there's a whole group of people out there who are like flying in the face of botulism is I didn't know that existed until I saw your video about it. That's wild.
Yeah, maybe sometime you should go down a rabbit hole of people who are rebel canning.
I think I'm gonna have to.
Whole episode about rebel canning.
Put someone on the podcast and they're like, no, rebel canning is safe. And I'm over here like,
I don't know if we can
platform.
I don't think we should be platforming rebel canners. What do you think has been the hardest thing about homesteading?
I think the hardest part is just learning how to do it. Like before I started making bread and stuff, I hated baking. Like I like had like a lot of compliments of like being a good cook. I didn't mind cooking. I loved it, but I was terrified of baking because it's so exact. And so the hardest thing for me was starting that, and then honestly just trying to make the time for doing that stuff and keeping up with my family and my social life, and I do work part-time, so it can be a lot to balance it, but I think once you get the hang of it, it all kind of flows the way that it's supposed to.
I have a question about the ducks that you mentioned earlier. Like, why ducks? Why not chickens? How did you make a decision about that next step?
Honestly, chickens are kind of mean, and they're really loud, and we don't have a fence, but we do have a pond on the property. So
Cool.
I thought, you don't really, this might not be good logic, but I thought that like maybe the ducks are more inclined to stay in the yard since there's a pond. And also they're really good for pest control in your garden. So they'll eat like any bug they see, regardless of if it's good for the garden or bad. And chickens will eat what you're growing. So it's kind of like that would defeat the purpose of growing the food, which obviously I'll feed the ducks some of the stuff that I've grown, but the full intent is to use their eggs for baked goods, because we're opening like a bake stand on the property at the end of this month. And yeah, the end of this month, it's February now. And I have a really good like chocolate chip cookie recipe, and I've heard that baking with duck eggs makes it like even richer. So I'm like, might as well try it.
That sounds so good.
Yeah.
And I don't think I'm in a position yet to like butcher any animals anytime soon. So I was like, if I have a chicken, like it's going to be expected of me that once it gets to a certain age that it needs to, and I don't think I'm ready to do that. I don't know if I ever will be ready to do that. So I just thought ducks might be the safest option for right now.
It's cool that you're like inviting a species in that hopefully will already like the environment of your property since there's a pond there. Like they'll like to stay just because it's nice there for them.
Yeah. Versus the chickens would probably drown in it. I don't know if they can swim.
Is there anything you want people to take away about homesteading?
That's a big question. Honestly, just don't put too much pressure on yourself. Like, even if all you can do is grow out of a bucket, like that's still better than doing nothing. You don't have to like dig a hole in the ground and do all that stuff because not everyone is able to do that. But if you can just grow something and learn how to make something, I think that's all that matters. It gives you, there's like such a feeling of empowerment once you can make something from your two own hands. And I just encourage people to try it because the more that you start doing it, the more you might want to do even more. And by doing that, it's healthier because, the food industry isn't really all that great. And it's a really good outlet. And so if anyone feels inspired to do so, I encourage it. So
Where do you recommend people start if they're homestead curious? Is there like a resource or a crop that you recommend?
I think cucumbers are really easy. You just have to give them like something to grow on. So like a trellis or like I don't know, like I guess just a trellis, or like old fencing or something. You just put it next to it, and it can grow up to like 8 feet tall. And you can make pickles or just eat cucumbers. Green beans are really easy, especially if they're the bush kind. So they just get like bushy instead of growing up. And you just pick them and they just keep growing back and you just keep going. And it's like they're kind of the same where they don't take up too much space, but they'll give you a lot of product and stuff. And but things like tomatoes are really tricky and they're very temperamental. So those are a little bit more difficult. But if you want to grow them, you should still try.
I do feel like tomatoes are one of the like sexier crops. Like, you want to just like grow tomatoes as soon as you start gardening.
Yeah.
I went to this gardening class in like November, but they were like, yeah, I encourage everyone to start with growing a potato. And I was like so uninspired. I like wanted to grow like heirloom tomatoes and cucumbers, not a potato. But cucumbers and green beans both sound great.
Yeah. And there's other things. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I was gonna say that sounds satisfying that like they just keep coming back.
And grow really tall.
Yeah. It's kind of like I was just about to say it's kind of like hemorrhoids.
But in a good way.
Big Ag does not want you to use that slogan. No. That's hilarious. Okay, well, thank you so much, Sierra. I think that was like the perfect note to end on.
Do you want to share where people can find you?
Oh yeah, plugs.
Okay, yeah. If anyone wants to check out what I'm doing and posting, I post on TikTok at Sowell Seed and Soil. It's kind of a tongue twister. And you can find me there on the same username on Instagram and YouTube as well. And those are pretty much the only platforms that I use. Thank you guys for having me and being so patient with me. I appreciate it.
Oh my gosh, thank you. It was such a pleasure.
It was great to meet you. Okay, that was awesome.
That was so cool. Thank you, Sierra.
Thank you, Sierra.
Sowell, Seed and Soil on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube.
Yes.
Go support Sierra.
We found her on TikTok and we were really excited to find her content.
Yeah. Scenester sisters, rise and support Sierra.
So kind of like transitioning to trad wives, I feel like one of the pipelines where you could go from like homesteader to trad wife is, okay, so you start with being a homesteader, you're really into like being healthy, and then you're like, I actually don't trust maybe anything I buy at the store. I'm doing my raw milk thing. This is just one possible path.
Totally.
There's totally different paths, both directions.
We're not trying to tell you how to become a trad wife from homesteading. You can figure that out yourself.
But then there's also like, you could, especially online, you could fall into the kind of content where for some reason the eating organic and drinking raw milk also relates to the role of the man and the woman, and like tapping into the divine feminine is something I always see. And I feel like that is like one of the trad wife archetypes, is like the more of the barefoot, crunchy type, that's super into making everything from scratch and gardening, and also very strongly believes that there are certain ways that a man should be and a woman should be, and that a woman should follow a man's lead.
I agree. So for anyone who hasn't been bombarded with trad wife content on the internet recently, which if so, jealous of your algorithm. Trad wives, basically it's like this movement that has kind of resurfaced in a big way recently, and it's this return to these ideas of like a 50s housewife, and specifically it's the idea that these trad wives should adhere strictly to like traditional gender roles, like Den said. So male dominance and female submission. It's very like Mad Men.
Yeah. And I want to be clear, like, just because you're a stay-at-home mom, that doesn't mean you're a trad wife. And I do think that like even some people that are claiming to be trad wives or like get sucked into that movement, like get that confused, because, and I don't know, I think a lot of it is like a very strong reaction to hearing more of the like girl boss feminism stuff of like, and maybe feeling like, oh, like feminism says I shouldn't be a stay-at-home mom, so I'm gonna now relate to this trad wife movement because I happen to like do these things that the trad wives say I should do.
Right, but there's completely different things. I mean, like Sierra said, you can, and that relates to homesteading too, like you can derive joy and like feel proud because you're able to like care for your family and provide for them in a way, and like raise kids. Like those are all very honorable, great things. And that has nothing to do with prescribing to ideas like men are dominant and like should have a particular role and women are subservient and should have a very separate role. But I do see these two ideas getting conflated in some ways when people are talking about the trad wife movement. It's interesting too right now, like, I don't know, in some ways, like I saw some people talking about the trad wife movement as this like modern reimagining of what it means to be a woman, which is so funny because it's like literally not that at all. Like it's actually not a modern we are imagining the exact same thing that has already happened, and it's not modern. But that also kind of reminds me of like what's funny about this whole movement is that from my like trad wives have never existed in the way that we are portraying them on the internet. Like it's really kind of romantic idea. And like in the 50s, we know, we've watched Mad Men, we know like these women were not, like it's never been that simple.
Yeah, it is ignoring like a lot of documented like abuses and like things that like have happened in like times when being like a traditional wife was more popular.
And also like even then, like I think part of trad wife thinking is that like there's work that should be done by the man that's not done by the women, and like that wasn't even true then. Like these 50s housewives were like doing a ton of work, and like, you know, all of the labor of maintaining a home that like isn't necessarily romantic. Like it's not things like just baking or like cooking or gardening. They were still doing like tons of labor outside of that just like wasn't being acknowledged in the public eye.
Yeah, I feel like a big part of what I see on like the kind of trad wife propaganda videos is like an insistence that it's so nice and so easy, because that's a big part of the argument to say that like they're not oppressed is by being like, I have a great life, like I get to stay at home, I get to go get my nails done and my spray tan, and I take my husband's credit card. It's amazing.
Mm-hmm. Like part of the idea, like the beautification of the self is like part of the work for the household. Yeah.
And like, have you seen people basically saying like, as a wife, you should always look a certain way? Like, even if you're just staying home all day, like you're supposed to put on makeup and not wear sweatpants.
I would be such a bad trad wife. Yeah, I've seen that content. It's crazy. It's like that scene. I don't know. I feel like they've done this in a few different movies and shows. I think I saw it in Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, where she like wakes up at 5 a.m. every day with like the quietest alarm, and her husband doesn't wake up, and she like does all her hair and makeup and then gets back into bed and like pretends to wake up. God.
Yeah. I saw even like in the trad wife subreddit, like some basically like women asking each other for advice on like how to be a trad wife, and being like, if I wear sweatpants sometimes, like can I still call myself a trad wife? It's like, girls,
I saw that too. Stand up. I saw can I be a gamer and still be a trad wife? And the responses were like, you can basically do whatever you want as a trad wife as long as you're doing it in a submissive way to your husband.
Yeah.
Scary.
Speaking of like the subreddits, did you see the TradWifePersonals one?
Rural R for R. Is that what we're talking about?
No.
Okay, wait, you go first.
This one is r/TradWifePersonals, and it's basically like, it's honestly mostly men looking for a trad wife, which makes sense, but there are also women on there. Some of the posts are, I mean, it's really like what you'd expect, but it is really like grim to read. It's just like all these guys being like, I'm like a 53-year-old divorced man looking for an attractive, fun, intelligent young woman, 18 to 30, who is interested in a long-term traditional relationship. You'll be expected to listen and obey and to cook, clean, take care of everything. And it's like people being very, like the men being very specific on like what physical attributes they're looking for. And basically all they're saying they'll give in return is financial stability.
Mm-hmm. That sucks. Yeah, I did see another subreddit, Rural R for R, which this maybe actually gets a little more homesteader adjacent. There was definitely a lot of trad wives.
Is that rural for
R
rural?
for R is like, no, that's what I thought too at first. I guess it's a Redditor for Redditor. So it's like, that's just something that Reddit communities will do sometimes when it's like a personals page. So this one's like generally rural, but I saw a lot of like looking for a traditional spouse on there. And I also saw, this actually was, I don't know if I should say more fun, but there were a lot of posts that were like, I am like a X age man or woman, mostly men. I just bought like 50 acres in Colombia and I'm looking for a wife to help me like start a farm there. And so it was a lot of like people moving to like different areas and looking for an internet spouse to come and like I guess, homestead with them, but I don't know like where their morals land.
It is like not just like rural or conservative places. Like I saw multiple posts in Seattle for men looking for a trad wife.
Definitely. No. And I think honestly, a lot of this is like, I saw a lot of people saying my husband like works in finance, or my like husband works in tech and he provides, like, it's like husbands with jobs that require like some connection to a commercial area in general.
Yeah.
So,
I
yeah.
mean, it makes sense why it would be incredibly appealing for a man. Like, it's literally all upside for the man. But I don't know, if you're a man who is like, wow, the good old days were when women were submissive and I could do whatever I wanted to them,
then do we have the community for you? On the Reddit piece, there were some other interesting posts that I wanted to run by you. Some of like the language that trad wives use is just so old-timey. Someone asked how to live bountifully off of one wage. Honestly, going
I
back
saw
to
that
Severance,
post too.
it's like very cure coded. It's like biblical. How to live bountifully off of one
Yeah, like, why are you
wage is-
talking like that? Like, that's, like, you know modern words.
Right, you have an iPhone. You're writing this. You're on Reddit.
You're Reddit, yeah.
Something else I saw that was funny. Someone asked, what's a good answer to give when I'm asked what I do in social settings and I plan to be a trad wife? How would you respond?
If I was a trad wife, I mean, I feel like it's pretty easy if you're a mom, because you can just be like, I'm a stay-at-home mom. But if you don't have kids,
Not a mom. You're just making things from scratch.
I feel like a lot of them do have like a a small business that they run from home that doesn't really make income. Like Serenity by Jan.
Yeah, Serenity by Jan. Yes. That's so funny because I've seen so many trad wives talking about like, I used to work a corporate job and I realized this wasn't the lifestyle for me, and then I like became a trad wife. That's so Serenity by Jan. Or like soap making is something I've seen.
But
like sometimes
I
they'll
feel
try to
like-
monetize the skills that they like developed in their training to be a trad wife, and then you can like sell the products that you know how to make, like tallow based skincare.
Yes, tallow. I was gonna say that's like another like
Cow.
a cow related like symbol of the trad wife, and like the homestead like sub group within trad wives, because I feel like there are different trad wife communities or archetypes. Like
One is like very Marilyn Monroe without being sexy.
yes, like
Modest
the 50s
Marilyn.
housewife style. And then like there's kind of more like the suburban, like basic, you know, sorority girl type that like doesn't care about modesty or like eating things from scratch, but is pro like having gender roles. And then there's like the more like we already talked about, the crunchy anti-vax divine feminine, like back to nature trad wife. Yeah, I think that like clearly it's not a new idea, and like lots of people all over are like living like a traditional wife life and like hold these values and like aren't necessarily calling it trad wife, or like are even know necessarily that it's like a trend online. I feel like what's different about it is now young women are finding it that weren't even raised this way. Like,
Yeah.
it's like I've seen people that, like, there's that one, I forget her name, like, famous trad wife influencer that was like an OnlyFans girl.
Oh, yeah.
Before.
Right.
Yeah.
And that also reminds me of something which I hadn't really considered before, but I guess like trad wife content is also, this obviously isn't everyone who's a trad wife online, but it is like a huge area of fetish content for people, which
Yeah.
so
That was a lot of the stuff on the TradWifePersonals what, like, there was mention of kink, like, in the personal ad, and it's kind of confusing. It's like, how much of this is kink versus like your genuine belief system? Maybe it doesn't even matter, and it's like all the same.
Right. Yeah. At the end of the day.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's very interesting, and I do feel like social media is like entirely responsible for this rise of people doing it who weren't like raised that way. I mean, maybe a little bit of it is just people being like, I need to touch grass. Like, I have to get off my
Or,
phone,
like,
and I'm going to
people,
start like making Cheez-Its from scratch.
Or like people being like burnt out and like being like the corporate life isn't what it's cracked up to be, or like having to like make all of these decisions is like exhausting. Which,
It's a
like,
symptom of the modern woman.
And also, like, I feel like for working moms, like that's often like a short end of the stick as well. Like, you end up doing like more of the home labor anyways. So I can see why, at least why people would be drawn to being a stay-at-home mom. And then I guess you find this content and it could lead you to being like, this is the way it's supposed to be.
It definitely romanticizes it. Like, people like Ballerina Farms and Nara Smith, like, they do make it seem like this very
and it's also crazy because, like,
lifestyle.
I'm not sure about Nara Smith because I know her husband Lucky Blue is also like a celeb in his own right, but I feel like a lot of these influencers ironically like are the breadwinner for their family.
Yes. This is something I wanted to talk about because it's like, not only are we kind of lying about the amount of labor that goes into all of these things, but we're also like, if the whole idea behind trad wifery is that like the man is the dominant breadwinner and women like really aren't supposed to hold traditional jobs, like, I don't know. There's definitely a dissonance happening there too. And it's unrealistic for people who get sucked into this community when they see influencers doing it, because these influencers are making a lot of money from this content, and that like supports this lifestyle. Whereas like people IRL, you know, they're going to have to figure out how to live bountifully off of one wage. And it might be a lot harder when you don't have like a Fit Tea subscription or whatever.
Yeah.
Or sponsorship.
Fit Tea, I'm just laughing at like, they're surviving off that Fit Tea.
They wouldn't even have that because they would like need to make it from scratch.
Or like they have like businesses like Ballerina Farm sells super expensive boxes of products from her farm and various other things.
And has people working on the farm and like helping her with her business. Yeah.
Well, Ballerina Farm is just like another level, but she's probably her and Nara are maybe the most famous trad wives.
Yeah,
but
I think so.
I think Ballerina Farm is literally married to like the heir of JetBlue, and she was a professional ballerina or is training to be. Yeah.
Full ride Juilliard. Yeah. I mean, like, things have worked out for her, at least in some sense, in that she's like the biggest trad wife influencer on the internet. But I do think I don't know. The movement in general is a little bit scary when we think about people like giving up.
Right, because most trad wives are not successful influencers. They're just regular traditional wives.
Right. They're not Ballerina Farms.
Yeah.
This also brings up, I saw a discussion about like the idea of conspicuous leisure, and that's like this idea that you basically like broadcast how you use your free time to indicate your social status and like how wealthy you are. And like that's so endemic to trad wife content, because something like making cereal from scratch is like, so, you know, like when Nara Smith makes like Cinnamon Toast Crunch from scratch in her like beautiful structural top, like that's not like the reality of like
I can't
being
tell
a stay-at-home person.
Like how in on it she is, or like how much of it is a joke, because it's like her videos, they'll always be like, my kids were hungry for Cheerios, so I and then she like makes the Cheerios from scratch. And it's like, obviously, if your kids are asking for Cheerios, they're not going to want to wait like 4 hours for you to make Cheerios from scratch.
Right. They're going to freak out. Yeah. How ironic that the like pinnacle of success for a trad wife is to actually have like 5 MLMs in different businesses and an online presence. You become even more of a girl boss than you were before.
Literally.
Okay, so I've come up with a little game for us. It's what is the most homestead or trad wife thing that you do?
One, I would say, is the fact that I own a lot of long skirts.
Totally. And is that homestead or trad wife for you?
I think that is a little of both.
Okay.
It's the homesteader subgroup of trad wife. Or it could just be homesteader too. You don't have to be a trad wife.
I think I feel really trad wife when I feel really trad wife when I put my hair in like one long braid down my back. Especially if I've just showered and it's like I want to go to bed, but my hair is still damp and I don't want it to get crazy. So I just I throw it in a braid down the back. To me, that's like,
it's very Little
so
House
like,
on the Prairie.
Very Little House on the Prairie. It's very like, you know, that photo from the Dust Bowl of the like hardworking woman. Like that's how I feel when I do it. Very Grapes of Wrath.
Yes. I feel trad wife when I ask my girlfriend if she's eaten today. Like, it's so like, have you eaten today?
It's very like, hey, honey, welcome home.
Yeah.
Oh.
What about you?
This is a very specific experience. I feel very trad wife when I go grocery shopping and I have my like heavy bag of groceries and I get on the bus. And then the bus is really crowded, so I have to hold on to the handle to like for stability on the bus because I feel like I'm like carrying this food home for my family, but also like my wrist feels like so delicate, like hanging below the handle.
You're like, I'm just so small and dainty. I could never carry all of these groceries and hold on. I feel trad wife. Okay, so I have these containers, like these clear plastic containers that I will take the oats that I've bought from the store and put into those containers.
Totally.
So I feel like that is very trad wife because there's a lot of like content of like trad wives making their pantries aesthetically pleasing.
Totally. But something else that I do that feels very homestead, specifically not trad wife, is cutting a man's hair.
Oh, yeah.
Like, first, cutting anyone's hair. But cutting your own, I would rank it like cutting your own hair is like the least homesteady. The next is cutting another woman's hair. And then cutting a man's hair is like so homestead to me.
The least homesteading is cutting yourself bangs.
Yeah, so true.
Cutting yourself bangs is so like being in an apartment.
It's so being in an apartment because you can't, you can't be in the garden with bangs. You can't have like Sabrina Carpenter bangs and be like tilling the land. Your forehead is going to get so sweaty. The least like trad wife thing, honestly, baby bangs, like micro bangs.
Yes.
That's also really giving apartment. It's giving like, Ivy Wolk.
Yeah. But like a mullet could be either.
Mm-hmm. That's so true. It's the center of the Venn diagram.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. Do you have any others?
No. Do you?
Okay, I have one more. Bear with me on this one. When I'm at someone else's house and I access the garage fridge, Like, I'm like, oh, I can go get that from the garage. Like, you know, they have like an extra cooler or fridge in the garage. And I'm like, I'll go get more sparkling water. I'll go get you a beer from the fridge. But it's outside the house.
Like,
to me, that's very
I feel
like,
that's
I'm
like
accessing.
very suburban to me.
I mean, it's like a suburban reality, but it's like you're going to get your canned goods. You're like,
okay.
I'm leaving the house.
You.
I'm harvesting. I'm getting my products. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
cool. So would
on that note, yeah, would I be?
I would definitely. Or
TradWife. So talking about TradWives today has actually made me feel like I would not be a TradWife. I honestly think in some ways I felt like I would be a homesteader more before I started doing research for this episode. And then I did get kind of intimidated by like the gritty reality of what like amateur butchering. That like seems really hard to me. But like talking with Sierra, I do think I could get into like homesteading as more of a hobby. Like I would love to get involved with like, I don't know, get on a community garden wait list in the city or like try baking bread, like things like that. So I would be a homesteader. And honestly, like later in life, I would be totally interested in trying to do something more intense, homesteady. But I think I would only do that if like we achieve our dream of communal living and then we could like rotate through homesteading while, you know, you go on vacation or whatever.
For sure.
How do you feel?
Yeah, I feel similarly. I mean, I don't think I would go full on homestead self-sufficient. You want to be able to take that spontaneous trip. I agree. So the communal homestead is appealing. I also think I'm like a lot more drawn to like the inside homesteading activities. Like if I had the time to make all that stuff from scratch, like that sounds really fun, even though it probably like gets old. But I've never, done much gardening.
Nara Smith homesteader, just make things from scratch inside.
Yeah. I feel like I would be a trad wife to a woman, but then it's not a trad wife. So I would be a stay-at-home wife to a woman.
I'm sure that scene exists. You could start that scene. Well, we have reached the end of TradWives and homesteading, and it is time to, for those of you who stuck around, it's time to connect with our Scenester sisters.
We got some great follow-ups from the shifting episode. So you want to just jump in? I can read the first one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So from Jake, he asked, is shifting a version of self-hypnotism? I know there are YouTube videos and things to try and hypnotize yourself. Just curious if that came up at all in your research. Did that come up at all in yours?
It definitely feels related to me in the sense that people were using these like self-hypnotism methods to shift. So I think shifters would probably say like it's not the same thing, but it's almost like self-hypnotism is a tool to get you to your different reality.
Yeah, and that's pretty much what I found when I looked into it after he asked. Someone on Quora said that shifting could occur during self-hypnosis, but it might not, or during hypnosis in general. So I guess in that sense, it's kind of, like it's a possibility, but it's not a guarantee if you're hypnotized that you're going to shift realities. And then
that's kind of a crazy comment too, because it's like, what if you, like that almost implies that you could accidentally shift. Like you could be self-hypnotizing to shake doing zins or something, and you could end up in like the Walking Dead reality.
You're shifting to the reality where you don't want zins, and then that becomes your CR. And someone else did kind of say like what you said, where it's like it's basically a method for shifting.
Cool. Well, thank you, Jake. We appreciate the comment. If you want to engage with us in dialogue, email notmyscenepod@gmail.com. Okay. Another submission from Ian. He says, the prevalence of Harry Potter shifting could be the extreme diversion that Rowling took towards extremist turf territory. I feel like that differs significantly from a lot of people's own interpretations of the verse, so they may want to essentially like retcon the author herself. I thought this was a very interesting idea. I didn't know what retcon meant, so I had to do some research on that. If listeners,
what does it mean?
Yeah, if you don't know what it means, I guess retcon is like it's a way to like change a story, to like go back in time and change something. So, but I think that it's also used online just to say like how to rewrite things.
Yeah.
So I did see someone. I looked into Ian's question. I did see someone on Reddit who said that they shifted to Harry Potter for the first time recently as a trans person, and they had been avoiding doing it because of J.K. Rowling's TERF views. So that was interesting. It didn't seem like they were using shifting specifically as a way to like retcon the Harry Potter universe. Like they were shifting before and they were specifically avoiding Harry Potter because of this. But I did think it was related because they ended up with the perspective that for them, it helped to think of it in terms of like, it's not like J.K. Rowling created a specific reality. They just brought she brought our collective attention to it. And so it's kind of like taking back ownership of Harry Potter as an idea and saying like, I'm not shifting to J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter. I'm just like shifting to Harry Potter, which she like pointed out for us.
That is such an interesting way to think about like a piece of fiction. Like I hadn't even thought of it like that. Like Harry Potter exists regardless of whether or not J.K. Rowling wrote the books.
Yeah, like don't worry about not thinking of a good new idea because there's no new ideas. Everything already exists. You're just identifying a specific reality.
Yeah. Wow. That's wild. Okay, Ricardo said, was the Sweet Escape intro song an intentional foreshadowing of the topic? If so, beautiful chef's kiss, compliments to the Potters. If not, crazy coincidence, potentially a sign that shifting is real. And Kaya needs to actually try to shift and report back, because without scripting, I feel like you can't say you've actually tried to shift. Both of you should. Just don't perma-shift here. Perma-shift and leave me alone with the clones. Lots
point taken. Lots to unpack there. No, Sweet Escape intro song. Well, to be clear, not Sweet Escape. We have transformed the song with Alex's beautiful marimba rendition and also changed a few things. So don't worry, Gwen. Don't come for us. Not the same song. But no, it was not an intentional foreshadowing of the topic, but that is kind of a nice tie into the ep.
Think of that.
We just love that song.
Yeah. It was the first song that I ever bought and downloaded on my first iPod, so I have a personal connection.
It's beautiful.
And I mean, I do agree with him that to really give it a shot, we should actually script, which I haven't done yet.
I haven't either.
Procrastinating shifting.
Procrastinating writing the script.
Exactly.
It's one thing to try. Like, I'm so down to manifest up here, but like,
yeah,
I'm at serious risk for a roommate discovering my written out script, and that is like such an it's crazy that shifters share their scripts online all the time. That's true self-love and confidence, because I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if I could do it.
Yeah, we won't leave you with the clones.
But way to incorporate shifting dialogue and lingo into your everyday vocabulary. Very good.
Seriously. That's good active learning.
Glenn sent a screenshot of a Reddit post where someone said, "You can't control what people shift to or their desired reality nor morals." My controversial take. This is still the post. Honestly, I understand people's views on killing people and their desired reality, but you can't control what a person does, and I believe it should be non-judgmental and recommend getting to know what they're going through before calling them a bad person. Even if they make it public, who are you to tell someone what they're doing is bad? They're shifting for a reason. Eventually, you're going to have to move on because you can't control what other people do. People don't have to follow a moral code or anything. I do believe some stuff is weird to do and disgusting, but we can't control that. So if you're one of those people, do what you want. It's none of my business. I think this post is definitely a reaction to other posts on the shifting Reddit.
Yeah.
Do you have opinions on this? Do you think that people can judge the morality?
It's a crazy thing to say if you are a shifter and believe that all of the realities are just as real as this one. Because, sure, you could say, don't judge someone for killing someone. You don't know what they're going through. You can say that about, our current reality, but it's kind of a crazy take.
I feel like it's definitely a crazy take. I can totally imagine a shifter being you're not endorsing the killing. You're just going to a reality where that person is dying. But in this situation, it sounds like the narrator, the shifter, is doing the killing. So I actually think there's some culpability there.
That kind of goes into the how much is scripted versus just happens. Are you just going to the reality where you kill someone and you would kill them no matter what? How much agency do you have?
Right, you're scripting I am going to kill this person in my reality.
And you're sorry, I'm just discovering it already existed.
I'm just going there. Sue me.
Yeah.
Glenn made the great point, too, that this definitely reads like a situation where the original poster is so clearly discussing their own preferences under the guise of being some people may want to kill people. I find that disgusting. But, this is definitely someone who's killing people in their desired reality.
Oh, yeah. Or is thinking about it. Joe sent me a great email where he told me that he looked into the CIA document and found that it was related to the Monroe Institute Gateway Experience, which was an effort to induce different brain states through auditory sounds, and maybe the CIA was interested in that for interrogation. And he also shared that he had done some shamanic work and felt it was similar to guided lucid dreaming, where he was asked to visualize different doors, and at a certain point he felt like he stopped making things up and it was just happening to them, which sounds like a cool experience.
Okay, wow, a lot to unpack there too. I feel like on the first point, it sounds like this Monroe Institute Gateway experience is deeply related to Severance. Because if you've seen the last episode, they talk about brain waves and aligning the brain waves and how that can affect your, and everything in Severance is true. That's nonfiction. So the science is there.
Imagine shifting to Severance.
I would not shift there.
No.
But yeah, that's so interesting. I mean, I think that's definitely viable that the CIA was looking for ways to access people in a more vulnerable state by shifting their brain or something.
It is weird though that they had the hypothesis that they could force someone to shift, because it seems from our prior research you have to really want to shift.
Yeah. I mean, you're jumping
you can't
across
just,
universes.
Play a sound and yeah.
Yeah. In my experience, you have to really want it, because I tried and it didn't happen for me. The door visualization, though, definitely sounds like something people would do. It's very similar to the getting on the train, stepping through the door.
Yeah.
Using transition points to send your mind to a different reality.
Okay, wait, sorry. I was what is that song? That Caroline Polachek song, Doors, was playing.
Yes.
Open the door to another door to another door.
Yes. Oh my God. Such a good connection. I love that song.
Same.
Well done,
All right.
Dan. Cool. Well, that was so fun. We loved receiving so many questions and discussion points. So if you have anything that you want to discuss related to Thusies or Wikipedia contributors. We would love to hear it. notmyscenepod@gmail.com.
Yes.
And thank you everyone who has subscribed and given us reviews and told your friends. It's been really awesome, and we're so
Yes.
happy to see a little Scenester community building around the pod. So
we're building
thank
our
you.
own community, our own scene.
New scene just dropped.
We're releasing bi-weekly now, so new episodes every other Tuesday.
Turn on that subscribe, that download button. We'll be here every other week. Sweet. Goodbye.
Bye.